Chapter 6. Gulliver in Liliput. It is one of the stories from the famous novel Gulliver's Travels written by Jonathan Swift. The story is presented here in the words of Gulliver. I was the youngest of 5 brothers. At the age of 17, I had to leave school because my father could not afford to pay my school fees. I decided to take up the life of a seaman. So, I went aboard a big ship called the Antelope that was sailing out to the South Seas. The ship set sail from Bristol on May 1700. At the beginning, there was good weather, but on our way to the East Indies we were caught up in a great storm and choppy seas. The ship was moving up and down. A dozen of our men died either because of the work overload or the poor rations that were delivered to us on the ship. Blown by strong winds, we found ourselves somewhere north of Van Diemen's Land. The next morning there was a heavy rain. The Antelope struck a big rock and foundered. 6 of us crewmen managed to escape from the wreck in a lifeboat. But soon, a strong gale rose out. The force of the gale capsized the lifeboat. I had no idea what happened to the other 5, but I managed to survive. I was lying flat and floated on the water, washed by wind and sea. I felt sure that I was going to die. My legs gave way under me. I tried to open my eyes wide and to my great surprise, I found I could stand up in the water. I walked on and on before I got to dry land and then some more searching for a house or someone who could help me. But suddenly I felt myself weak and collapsed on the short, soft grass and went under a deep sleep. It was daylight the next day. When I woke up, I found that I was not able to move. Lying on my back, I discovered that my arms and legs were tied down to the ground with strings. My long hair was held down in the same way, and thousands of strings crossed my body and held me tightly to the ground. I could not move. All I could do, lying on my back, was to look up helplessly to the sky. The warm bright sunlight began to hurt my eyes and at the same time, I could hear noises around me. Soon, I felt something climbing onto my foot. They started moving up and down my body. Some of them came up near my face. Turning my eyes downwards as far as I could see, I was amazed to see a tiny little man. He was not more than 6 inches tall and appeared to be dressed as a soldier. Then another 40 men who looked like him climbed on my body and looked into my face. In surprise, I gave out a great scream. The little men were frightened. They ran off, and as they jumped off my body, some of them fell down and got injured. Then, one of the little men, braver than the rest, climbed back on my body and looking into my face he threw up his arms and in a clear voice shouted something. Others took up his cry, but I could not understand what they meant. I made a hard stretch to my body and managed to tear open the strings and free one arm. I also managed to raise my head. I felt a great pain in my head as many of my hairs were torn off. I reached out to catch some of the little men, but they were too quick for me. They ran off. Then I felt as if 1,000 needles were pricking my hand. The little men were shooting arrows at me. The arrows were no larger than the size of pins, but when some of them hit me in the face it was very painful. Fearing that some arrows may penetrate my eyes, I put my hand across my face to protect them. I then quickly decided that my wisest strategy this time should be to lie quite still till nightfall. At night, I could easily and quickly free myself. I had no cause to fear these little people. I thought they were no larger than what I had already seen. When the little men saw that I had calmed down, they stopped shooting at me. However, by the increased clamor, I realized that their number had become greater. Hearing a sound near my ear, I turned my head and saw that some of the little men were building a platform about 18 inches high. When the platform was complete, 4 of the little men got up on it. One of them, who appeared to be older and somewhat higher than the other 3, wore a beautiful cloak which was held up off the ground by a tiny little boy standing behind him. The man in the cloak said something in a clear, loud voice, and immediately a large group of the little folk came around near my head and cut the remaining strings that held my hair down. I could now see the people on the platform clearly. The man in the cloak, who seemed to be their leader, made a long speech, and although I could not understand, I managed to follow what he said as he waved his arms about in a sort of sign language. I could succeed only to understand that I would not be harmed if I did as I was told, but if I tried to break free they would kill me. I gestured that I understood what he meant and remained quiet. But then I realized I had nothing to eat for a great many hours. So, I put my hand to my mouth to show I wanted to eat. The leader seemed to understand what I wanted and turned to the little folk and gave some orders. Soon, 100 men marched up to my face carrying food which had been sent to me by their king as soon as he had heard of my arrival. I did not know what the food was. Hens were of the size of beans and loaves of bread. I ate 3 at a time. The wee folk cried in surprise how I could eat so much, so quickly. I then indicated that I wanted to drink something. A large number of men carried a big pot of milk and poured it into my mouth. I asked for another pot of milk and they brought it, but when I called for a third, they made signs that there was no more. I had drunk all milk of that country. After this generous meal, sleep descended upon me. That was my first day in Liliput.